Okay, so I'm now recording, obviously. Now, the thing that we want to sort of redraw on here is these bullet points. Now, these are the sort of important things really here. Okay. Now, what you need to be doing really is each paragraph you write kind of needs to be doing these four things. Okay. You need to be including these four elements within each paragraph you write. And again, if we have a quick look at the question paper too, these three bullet points that are given the scaffolding, they need to be an ingredient for every single paragraph you write here. Okay, so let's have a quick look at this. And the keywords to mention as well, as always, are the sort of descriptors. So level 4, they call that perceptive, detailed, and evaluation. Let's just increase that bit. Okay, at level 3, it's called clear and relevant evaluation. At level 2, some evaluation, and at 1, simple and limited evaluation. So at level 4, you are at each level, you need to be doing something evaluative. And frankly, as an evaluation is to sort of weigh up evidence, have a think about what's been presented to you and make some sort of judgment. If you're answering this question in any way at all, then you are going to be doing some evaluation at least. Okay. Of course, depending on how clear, how perceptive that evaluation is, will sort of put you in one of these bands. And as you can see, the bullet points, the sort of focus of the bullet points doesn't really change. Okay, so we know that we need to be thinking about the effects on the reader. So we need to be thinking about these methods that the writers used, and we need to be thinking about the effects on the reader. We know that we need to understand why the writer has used these methods. We know that we need to be quoting. Okay, so that's what that means, judicious range. And we know that we need to respond to the focus of the statement. Okay, so we know that this is what we're going to be judged on. This is what we are going to be marked on. So let's have a bit of a think about how a learner can do this. Now, if we have a bit of a look at the question here, we are told, we are given a statement. And we know that from the mark scheme, rather, that we need to consider methods. Okay, so how the writer shows that Alex is struggling to cope in this case. We know that we need to consider our own impressions of Alex, and we know that we need to support our response with references to the text and each paragraph. So what a student can do to start with. So the first thing to sort of bear in mind really is that if a student is clearly considering this statement to start with, so engaging with this statement, they are looking for stuff that is showing Alex struggling to cope with his mother's illness. Okay, so that's the focus of the statement. The focus of the statement is that this particular part of the extract is showing Alex is struggling to cope with his mother's illness. Okay, so the first thing to do is really clearly read through and engage with the statement. And you want to open with this. Ideally, you open your answer with this. Okay. Secondly, you need to make some sort of evaluation of your impression of Alex and if he is struggling to cope or not. Thirdly, you need to then identify a method the writer uses. Okay, now a method here can be a language feature, a word choice, structural feature like focus, or even stuff we don't really consider in questions 2 and 3. So that could be things like narrative voice, for instance. which, while it is a structural feature, doesn't tend to be a big part of the structure beyond this is told from the first person or the second person or the third person omniscient. That could become important in this question, so we might want to reference that. We might want to talk about that. And then finally, and don't forget to quote. And then finally, we need to evaluate. So we need to evaluate the effect of this method on the reader. And what we have to bear in mind here is we're not just sort of talking about it in general terms, specifically how it shows or doesn't show that Alex is struggling to cope. Now, depending on the question, obviously some questions might be a bit more general about atmosphere and stuff like that. So the effect would be, well, how does it build the atmosphere? I think the Brighton Rock one, for instance, talks about, you know, sort of like how it sort of portrays Brighton as a sort of like a sinisterish place underneath the surface. I can't remember off the top of my head. So that'll be about that. But in this case, we're looking at Alex and his inability or otherwise to cope. And that's what we need to be doing in each paragraph. And again, as I said, it is an essay question, so they are going to want to see more than one paragraph answer in this, okay? And if we go back to the mark scheme here, we can see all these elements. So that understanding of the effect on the reader, for instance, you know, being able to identify that a writer has used different methods, quoting decent text that backs this up, and also engaging with the question, you know, saying, well, I agree with the student here, or I partially agree with the student here. Okay, all of this is important. Okay, and that is what the mark scheme is looking for. In a little bit, we're going to have a look at some example answers real students have written to answer this question, and we're going to have a bit of a go applying the mark scheme here and having a bit of a think about it. Okay.